Hello, English 154, writing about energy and sustainability. This is Dr. Whipple here. I hope you're having a good week with this beautiful fall weather. I'm coming to you from the basement of my home, which is where my video studio is located. Um, as you can probably tell from my voice, I'm still getting over a pretty bad case of bronchitis. So I want to thank you very much for your understanding and your consideration as I get over this and work on your paper number one, which should be back to you by the end of this week. You've asked about paper number two, and I'm happy to talk about that. Paper number two is simply a paper in which you're writing a book review. Now, it's going to be a more involved and longer book review than any that you would see on the internet or in a newspaper or magazine. What we're doing here is making value judgments, saying that something is good or something is not good, something has value or it doesn't have value. And we're basing that on our understanding of particular criteria in the book. When I say criteria, what I mean is the different constituent parts of the book by which we can make judgments. Okay, so let me give you some examples. For a film or a movie, we look at criteria all the time. If you look at the Oscars ceremony every year in the spring, they give awards based on acting. They give awards based on cinematography, special effects, music, costuming. Those are all criteria. Those are all separate thematic ideas, thematic parts of the film that you can look at. You can also judge a film by stuff that they don't give awards for. For example, originality, casting, characterization. Characterization is different from acting. Characterization is how realistic the character is, or how believable the character is, as opposed to acting, which is largely how well that Brad Pitt does in his portrayal of X or Y or Z. Okay, let's look at books. Books have the same, not the same, but very similar criteria by which you can judge them. When we look at a book, we can judge a book by several criteria. We can look at its style. We can look at the humor in the book, and there's a little bit of humor, I think, in Animal Vegetable Miracle. So we can look at the humor. We can look at the readability. We can look at the accuracy of the book. We can look at the science of the book. Is the science of the book accurate? There's a lot of sort of agricultural stuff going on in that book. Is it accurate? We can look at the believability of the book. Okay, is this a really believable book? We can look at the balance of the book. Does Barbara Kingsolver balance separating or competing ideas? Okay, we talked about the fact that she's kind of an evangelist for the things she's talking about. Okay, we can talk about the story, the storyline. I mean, there's a narrative, there's a year-long narrative about this family in this book. What do you think about the story? In each case, whatever the criteria you use, and I've just given you some criteria examples, you're going to have to make a value judgment about that criterion. By the way, please be careful with that word. Criteria ends with an A. That is the plural. Criterion, Criterion, that is the singular. They come from the Greek, which is why they have a weird singular and plural formation. Okay, make sure that when you talk about my first criterion, but my three criteria, just make sure you're using those in the correct way. For each of your criteria sections, therefore, you're going to need to have a structure like the following. You're going to need to have an introduction, couple of sentences that explains your point of view about the criterion, whether you think that criterion is good or not. Then you're going to need to have your examples with good introductions and conclusions from you. And then you're going to need to provide some explanation at the end of that, after those examples, that explain how your examples prove the point you say they prove. Examples by themselves, as I've said before, do not by themselves make a point. It's how you frame and discuss those examples. Okay, so basically, what you're doing is you're making three small arguments and backing those arguments up with examples from the text, and then explaining that. This is a kind of writing you've probably done many times before. All right. So to recap, you have. By the way, somebody asked, What do I mean by assess the text? Assess, A-S-S-E-S-S, simply means to make value judgments about a text. To assess, to quantitatively or qualitatively make judgments about the quality of something, a text, a program, or something else. Okay, that's what assess means. So what you're doing is assessing animal, vegetable, miracle as well. Okay, so to conclude, you need 3 criterion sections. You need 2 examples from the text, 2 quoted specific examples. Don't paraphrase. Don't say, Kingsolver says that, blah, 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 blah. You need the specific quotations from the text. You quotations that are framed by your prose. You need to have the page number properly placed at the end of each example. You need to have explanation of your particular quotations in that criterion discussion to discuss and explain why what you've said proves what you say it said. Okay? Obviously, this paper needs its own overarching introduction and conclusion as well. I think I've covered most of the questions that people have asked me about paper number 2. I'll be happy to answer any more questions